Hello, everyone. I am Kat. Welcome to Cosmic Metamorphosis. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today is September 15th already. Oh my God, where has September gone? Like, where? Where has September gone? It just started. Um, so many things happening within the past couple of weeks. I'm sorry I haven't been able to make a video. I've either been working, I've been having to do things, getting things settled. We went out of town for a day, and I'll show you some pictures. So wow, the queen dying is a major marker. I'm so happy. Like I could just do the dance of joy. So things are gonna start happening majorly. So I'm so excited. So today we're gonna do Alex Collier's August 26th webinar, number 164. But if you actually, oh my gosh, I got to tell y'all something. I got my first badge of honor from YouTube. Apparently I have a strike on my medbeds number 39 video. I got a strike and they took it off, so because it was medical misinformation. So I got my first badge of honor from YouTube. I love it. I just thought I would tell you that. Anyway, yeah, last week after Labor Day, we headed north, and I will share my screen so you guys can see where we went. I'm so old-fashioned. I like send everything to my email, and then uh, and then I open it up. So this is where we went. It is Lake Pend Oreille. In northern Idaho. This is where there was a naval base because the lake is so deep. They did submarine training here. It's very interesting. So this is a little cove. This is where I used to go when I was a teenager in high school. And we used to go swimming and sunbathing, and the water here is like so crystal clear. You can see right to the bottom. You can see how clear it is. It's just beautiful. And there were these ducks that were out there, and of course I had to feed them some of our some of our cheese popcorn that I had. And one was eating out of my hand, so I thought that was really cool. Let's see. So there should be one more picture. This is the view across the bay where you go swimming. So it was a little hazy from the fires, all the smoke from Oregon. So yeah, it was a little hazy, but it wasn't too bad. And then this was like a little trail that you could walk on. So this is part of the view of the lake. And this is overlooking. The trees were kind of in the way on this one, but this doesn't look like a huge mountain, but it's a really big mountain. This was the view off of our cabin. So we were surrounded by trees, and I did see a UFO that night. The moon was so bright, like we couldn't even face it. We had to turn the other way, and we had to find this little patch out in the front. We sat out and watched up in the sky, and I saw several ships, but I saw one in particular that like literally just powered up and faded away. It was awesome. So they're up there. This is another view across the lake. And here's another view. You couldn't really tell. It was overcast when I took these pictures. And then, of course, after I took the pictures, the sun came out. So it was crazy. That's the back of my daughter taking a picture across the river. Or the lake, sorry. We got a river here. I think, did I already show these? Yeah. So there was some pictures. Did I miss one of our cabin? I think I missed one of our cabin. That was the view off the cabin. But it's a cute little cabin. They do have cabins for rent. It was really cheap. It was called Nighthawk. And then they have like all different names, Redtail and Kestrel, and so you can rent those cabins for $67 a night. And it was great just to get away. It's great just to get away. So anyway, I thought I would share a few of those pictures with you. So, oh my goodness. I hope all my soul family is doing well. And boy, between yesterday and today, I am just feeling very empowered, and I am just feeling like a true warrior. Like I am just shining my light outward because things are coming. Big things are coming, and I'm just so excited, and I'm just ready for the fight. I'm like renewed and I'm ready, you know? So hopefully y'all are too, because we're awesome, right? Okay, so let's get into Alex Collier's August 26th of 2022, number 164. He says, just for disclosure, he says, I don't feel prepared for today. He says, I don't know why I haven't been sleeping, and I know I'm not alone in that. It's just it doesn't matter what I do. I can't turn off anything. He says, so listen, as we go through the current stat, and what I've done is I've pulled a bunch of things together here. He says, ladies and gentlemen, there are just layers and layers of things going on. And we have talked about that. What we're going through is a third, fourth, and fifth dimensional chess game. And what's happening is there are things going on in multiple levels. And what's really fascinating is how all of these different levels and the movement on third, fourth, and fifth density. He says how these current movements are all in sync. He says there are all these pieces moving together, even though they're separate. He says it's really quite remarkable when you see it for the first time. I apologize because I should have took my Zyrtec because my nose is running today. I need to take some allergy stuff. So yeah, he says when you see it for the first time, he says because you're like, oh my God, this is definitely really happening. He says because you know our eyes and our consciousness are fixed on third density. He says those of you who are spiritually awake and more advanced than I am, he says, I'm sure you're seeing fourth and fifth. He says, you're seeing the movement of not only intent, but all of these pieces moving towards a very specific goal. And what's interesting is that they're all moving towards a singular moment. And he kind of laughs and he says, it isn't far away. He says, I'll tell you that it is not far away. He says, this moment where everything shifts, it's really quite extraordinary. So this was a couple weeks before the Queen died. So I think we all were feeling something coming, right? So he says, I have a mishmash of current stat stuff here. He says that I've gotten from multiple sources. And the only reason I'm sharing this is because I have, in my own way, been able to verify this data. He says, now, if you could remove the raid on Mar-a-Lago, the Trump thing, he says, if you could remove that from the news, and if you could remove the Ukraine-Russia issue, he says, the fact that now the Nazis want to hold tribunals, and he laughs. He says, isn't that hysterical? He says, that they want to hold tribunals, the Nazis. Says, if you could remove that from the mainstream media, you would probably hear about some of this other stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you today. He says, it's really extraordinary, frankly. He says, so let's start with this. In December of 2015, intelligence sources or the white hats, recorded a phone call between President Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and a third party. And the conversation they were having was who was going to replace Justice Anthony Scalia on the Supreme Court. And Alex laughs and he says, now, this was December 2015. Now, that in itself would be odd, except for the fact that Justice Anthony Scalia didn't pass away under strange circumstances until February of 2016. He said, so I want you to use your imagination, okay? And go to that place, that conspiracy place. I want you to go there. You would have heard about that phone conversation, but you didn't, because the media won't cover it. Of course they won't, because they're bastards, right? Moderna is suing Pfizer for patent infringement on its mRNA jab. And he laughs and he says, okay, it's just amazing. He says, in Germany, and I know we have some Germans on here, he says there is a group of LGBTQXY something that now want to add a Z. And these people are called zoophiles. They want it to be legal to have sex with animals. Isn't that called bestiality? Yeah. He said, guys, you can't make this shit up. And he laughs and he says, you just can't make this shit up. But that's what they're doing. They want to make sex with animals legal in Germany. And that's when private starships fly through our solar system. He says they get on the loudspeaker and they tell everybody on the intercom, please roll up your windows and lock all the hatches. Okay, we're passing Earth. This is why they do it, okay? Because it's nuts. It's just nuts. It says we talked about this many years ago, several years ago, about Uranium One. So yeah, that whole bestiality stuff. And I've seen pictures, and I didn't want to see pictures, but I've seen pictures in social media of these poor animals that are like taped up because people want to have sex. There was a story in my own town that there was a so-called house sitter. There was a dog he was watching. It was a little boy's dog. I guess the boy had autism or something, and somehow this person knew the family. Family went away on vacation. The guy stayed at the house, and brutally tied this dog up and raped it so much he killed it. He killed this little boy's dog. Okay. That shit is fucking disgusting. Disgusting. Okay. I don't put up with that shit at all on children or animals. That is fucking disgusting. There's something fucking mentally wrong with you when that shit happens. So I'm sorry. I'm on a rant today. I'm just gonna say it. Okay. I gotta breathe. Don't get me started on that. All right, so now he goes into talking about Uranium One. It says Uranium One, the company out of Canada that was owned by a parent company out of Russia. They were owned by guys in Russia. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to put together a deal in Kurdistan, but they needed someone to champion the deal. And of course, I call her Hillary. Hillary Clinton was more than happy to do it, as long as there was a donation attached, and it may not have been a prerequisite. Says, but it's interesting that after this went down, the oligarch that owned Uranium One donated $31 million to the Clinton Foundation. Says, so, everybody was happy. Everybody won. Says the former President Bill Clinton got $500,000 speaking fee for 45 minutes. I remember that. Yeah, I was like, that's freaking ridiculous. Like, are you insane? I think, he says, I think it was, which was great for him. And then the Canadian Uranium One wanted to move into the United States. It was really interesting how all that came about because once again, they needed someone to champion this particular deal. Sorry if the pages are kind of loud when I'm turning it. I'm going to try and turn this up too because some people said they couldn't hear me. So I'll try and turn it up. I need to get one of those microphones, that most people have. That's what I need. I need a microphone. He says, and the strange coincidence, Hillary Clinton was still Secretary of State, so she championed the deal. And in the media, we were told that it was only roughly 20% of uranium. Turns out it was well over 40, closer to 50% of America's uranium. He says that this deal was for, and the deal was signed off. This is 2012 to 2014, he says. And when everything was signed, the Clinton Foundation received another donation from this same Russian oligarch for $100 million. And the very first sample of American uranium was boxed up, packaged up, made all nice and safe. And the director of the FBI at the time, who was Robert Mueller, was gracious enough to put it on the FBI's plane, his own particular plane that he used, and fly it to Moscow himself and deliver it. He says that was very nice of him, wasn't it? And everybody was happy, which is interesting because this is probably one of the biggest reasons why the military wanted to do a coup against Barack Obama. He says, and they were extremely close to doing it. But then they decided to talk to Donald Trump, who agreed to then run for president because they weren't sure how the coup was going to go. So you would have heard about that story, that information, probably in the last 10 days. It says, but you didn't hear anything about it. So we have that, okay? It says, do you remember when they passed the Patriot Law? The Patriot Act? He says, and no one fucking read it? Says, do you remember that? You had to pass it in order to read it. It was one of those deals. So it was a backwards deal. Yeah. It says, well, it turns out that somewhere in the Patriot Act, in the language, it gives Homeland Security the right to intercede events. How do I word this? It gives them the authority to take over and to do things to supersede the executive branch of government, the judicial branch of government, and the congressional legislative branch of government. So this is in the Patriot Act. Now the FBI, realizing they were on an unprecedented ground, he says, with a warrant to go after documents at a former president's house, have used this clause in the Patriot Act. Now, what's interesting is that the information in the documents that they took, if you've noticed that the language they were looking for nuclear codes. He says, well, now the language has shifted. Big surprise. He says it has shifted to, well, because of national security concerns, they were never going to divulge. He says what's in the documents they took. And that's because those documents contain not only the issues of Uranium One, not only the money laundering that's going on and still going on, it says out of the Ukraine, it also involves specific branches of government involved in child trafficking, human trafficking, as well as elements of the Department of Defense, sadly. It says, and a bunch of other stuff, okay? It says you would have heard about that story too, because all of this information is being disclosed. He says, and it's being put out there. And in fact, all the information the FBI took from Mar-a-Lago has been declassified. And the FBI is now saying, because of the nature of that, that we're not going to be able to see the documents because many of the documents directly implicate the Department of Justice course it does. And the FBI, and incredible crimes of not only sedition, but of treason. And it's because of that that the United States national security has totally been compromised. It has been compromised. He says there's no question about it. He says they convened, they covered up the Clinton server. They've covered up all kinds of other things. He says the fact that Barack Obama's emailing and having conversations with Hillary Clinton in an unsecure server, and he was using an alias. He says, this is like, wow. It's amazing how deep this goes. He says, so the white hats have been very, very busy. The white hats around the world are very, very busy, but it looks like September and October are really going to be something. They really, really do. So far, they are. Oh, did you see that thing where like Zelensky got in a car accident supposedly today? Good actor, huh? Good actor. Who cares? Globally, he says, on a third density level, there's a tremendous amount of movement behind the scenes with the military forces around the world in each country. And as I said earlier to you, it appears that there is a coordinated effort to do everything around a single moment. It says now, what's going to trigger that moment? Will it be a nuclear event? Maybe something in Ukraine? I mean, we know the Ukrainian army is bombing Europe's biggest nuclear plant because the Russians have control of it. It says the Russians are now saying that it's leaking. Will this be the provocation? It says we don't know yet. It says, will it be a UFO thing? We don't know that either. What you need to be aware of specifically is that these situations are in fact being orchestrated in order to try to wake up as many people as possible. I think at this point it's way too altruistic. Nonetheless, that's what they're going to do. Okay. He says they're going to try to wake up as many people as they can to what's happening. I tell you, I feel like there's so many people still asleep. Like there's a lot of people that are awake, but they're too afraid to say anything. I see that all the time where I work. So if one person says something, then like, because I usually don't say anything at work unless I know there's certain people I can tell things to, but some customers start talking and then I'll talk back to them about it. So it's kind of funny. Several Army military bases have been put on notice that the Biden administration wants to send troops to Kiev. It says, I don't know if that's going to fly, but they've been put on notice, and that would be here in September. So we haven't heard anything about that yet. There is a great deal of battle theater being created by the media to get everybody amped up, to get everybody in anger, to get everybody in fear, because they're doing their damnedest to trigger an emotional response. Okay? He says, and attack, so they can justify locking down the United States or other parts of the world in a martial law scenario and to bring in UN troops. He says, into the cities in the United States. He says, so this is all being done on purpose because the deep state has lost. They've lost. He says they're frantic. He says, so there's going to be many things happening simultaneously, both white hat and black hat. There's also in the D-class documents that the FBI took were pictures and film of things that happened on Epstein Island. It says, so, inside the temple and in the underground areas, that was in there as well. So I can hear some of you saying, well, Collier, how would you know? He says, you don't have to take my word for it. It's okay. Really, it's okay. And he says, Uganda, which has recently announced that it has trillions and trillions of dollars in gold under the ground in its country is very concerned because private military as well as the military industrial complex is moving into position to surround Uganda. He says that's because they want to take over the country and steal all the gold. The president of Uganda has formally asked Putin in Russia and Xi in China for assistance to fight off this invasion of his country. It's interesting you haven't heard about this, right? Right. I don't think I heard about that. So, yeah. Of course, we're not going to hear about it, right? There's also information that's buried in the Ukraine there's also information that buried in the Ukraine is one of the largest, if not the largest pyramid on Earth is buried under Earth in the Ukraine. He says it's also interesting that it is said to be covered with gold. He says with a gold capstone on it, and the gold capstone is of a greenish color. So gold doesn't oxidize. So it may be gold with another mineral. It's impossible to say at the moment. He says, but you haven't heard that story either, have you? Of course not. It says also in Cremia, there is an area where they have found very large underground vaults that contain old extraterrestrial technology. He says, you haven't heard about that either. That's very interesting. He says, Pope Francis has instructed all of the Vatican affiliates and entities to transfer all funds and assets to the Vatican Bank by September 30th. You haven't heard about that either, huh? And he laughs and he says, and before we get into other stuff, the country of Iraq has been clearing out all of their corrupt politicians. And that clearly has taken a while. He says, especially when it came to Maliki. He says, Maliki, I guess they can't find him. He says, big shock. He says, but anyway, they're very, very close to forming their own government. And once they announce their new government, they will also announce the new gold-backed dinar. And they will release the new rates. It says they will release the new rates. It says new international rates for the Iraqi dinar. Okay? It says so. It isn't that far away. There's a lot of things going on, and somehow they're all simultaneously working together. If you look at each thing individually, you wouldn't see it. But big picture is they're all moving together. Says, and this last piece that I want to share with you, he says, well, you're just going to have to sit with this one. He says, we have a new Joint Chief of Staff, Marine General David Berger. Now the Marine website still says General Milley. It is not. He says it is Berger. He is now running the show. The General Woodward at Camp Pendleton has released a notification document essentially stating that former President Donald Trump said speaks to the Department of Defense. Okay? Trump still speaks to Department of Defense. I wonder why. Because he's still president? Huh. Says now, when it comes to General Milley, or Miley, there's a rumor that he is headed south, as in South America. Headed south, and there's also another rumor. There's a kill or arrest order for his return to the United States. So for those of you who aren't aware of what that means, the kill arrest order, they're not interested in handcuffing or bringing him back. They're interested in bringing him back in a body bag. So, and I know you haven't heard about that either, he says. So, there is an extraordinary amount of information going on, and events going on behind the scenes. And when people are doing their research, whether it's Telegram or somewhere else, it says we have to open up our field of vision because there's an awful lot more going on here. And it behooves you to pay attention to these things. He says it's not that you can't do anything about it, but when all of these things, when all the dominoes start to fall together, it says the last thing that you want to do is fall into fear and panic. It says because if you're paying attention to this, then you clearly understand what's happening in the world today. And if you understand, there's no reason to be in fear because what you're seeing is the movement of good over evil moving into place and locking down evil. And it has to happen this way. It just simply has to happen this way because at least here in the United States, virtually every institution we have has been compromised, which is why our national security has been compromised. And especially our judicial system, even in my town. Don't get me started with that one, with the crap I'm having to deal with. So, anyway, it says, and I don't know if any of you listen to Mark Zuckerberg on the Joe Rogan show. It says, but he made a very interesting comment that the FBI showed up to Facebook and told them to make sure that any information regarding Hunter Biden's laptop be squelched and suppressed. It says this happened before the election. Now, for those of you who have been following that story, you know what's on that laptop. It's horrific. But the FBI specifically asked them to suppress that information because they wanted Biden to win the election. So, he says they're not impartial. In fact, they may never have been. So, and he laughs and he says a lot of information is coming out and we're not going to get this from the mainstream media. It's just not going to happen. So, unfortunately, what we're going to have to do is we have to do this work ourselves and do the research and support all of our alternative sources because people are doing the job. They're doing the work. They're coming up with these stories. They're digging deep. They're the information from firsthand sources who are anonymously sharing information and then backing it up with whatever proof they can get their hands on. So it's interesting. He says it's really quite interesting. And in a lot of ways, he says it should be extremely comforting because, yes, things have been upside down for quite a long time. But now you're seeing the proof of it. Now you know within yourself. Your intuition was right. Yes. Says that things are wrong. Things don't feel right. So that should be self-empowering for those of you who knew this information and have been following the frequency of the changes, not only in the United States, but the world. It says Canada. Those of you in Canada, the white hats in both countries, says the United States and Canada are absolutely on the same page. So when things move here, things will move there. Australia, he says, guys, you haven't been forgotten. You have not been forgotten. You're gonna be okay. He says, I know it's a nightmare and a shitstorm, but you're gonna be okay. He says, everything's gonna turn on a dime, okay? Which it just did because didn't that lady, oh God, I can't remember her name. She just got rid of all the mandates, the COVID mandates, the masks and all that. She just did it the other day after the Queen died. Yeah, wonder why. Says this is all simultaneously going to happen and it's going to turn on a dime and we're not far away. We are not far away, he keeps saying. I can't give you a time or date because no one has the time or the date, but all the resources have been put into place. which is interesting. He brings up Canada and Australia because maybe he did, like, we've all been hearing, like, heard for a while the Queen was, sickly and couldn't do anything. We knew she was going to die any day, but they just keep stringing things out, making these people live forever. So the minute I heard she was dead, I was like, oh my God. Huge, huge. He says, and the non-terrestrial inner Earth beings are completely in alignment with the non-terrestrial alliances that are assisting us here on the surface. It says everybody's in sync. Everybody is moving together. You have to know this because you have to come to a place where you're calm inside. You need to understand that everything is in hand. Even though it may not appear to be, it's meant to be that way to wake people up. He says they are committed to doing this, and that's just what it is. That's just what it is. He says, but it's not going to go too far. He says, they're not going to allow this to go too far. There is a point in which enough is enough, and they know that. It says looking glass technology, both 1 and 2, Tesla technology, all of it is in a safekeeping in Cheyenne Mountain here in Colorado. It says CERN is also being managed by the White Hats, both in Switzerland and in NORAD here in Colorado. It says, so the underground facility underneath Lake Geneva has been completely isolated. Completely isolated. He said, so that's all I'm allowed to say on that as things move forward. What these events are going to do, it's going to force people to realize that we have all made a mistake, and that mistake is one of surrendering our power and our authority as a civilization to governments, government bureaucrats, unelected representatives or unelected bureaucrats, he says, and professional elected representatives who simply cannot be trusted with power or the ability to write their own bills and spend billions of dollars. It says now, this has happened around the world, and we were conditioned to do this, to surrender our autonomy and our authority. Now, in communist countries and monarchies, it's been that way for quite some time. But you see what happened that threw a wrench in everything was the United States. He says that created a huge monkey wrench and the entire global government plan, okay? The United States wasn't meant to happen. And it threw back their plans like 150 some odd years. And when they saw the opportunity to do so, to get back in and begin the process of dismantling the United States and eroding the Constitution of the United States, which gave the people the authority to rule themselves, that didn't come about until 1871, and it's been a process until 2016. They figured in 2016 they had it all locked up. He says, Obama had teed everything up for Hillary. They never expected her to lose. They never expected President Trump to win. And when that didn't go down the way they wanted, he says, well, if you're here in this country and you're paying attention, you know the rest of the story. Katie bar the door, he says. They lost their minds. Said so. They've done everything and will continue to do everything to destroy liberty. Self-responsibility, self-rule, self-reliance, because in their minds, they're the superior race. They're the superior beings. And just because they're hybrids, they come from bloodlines that go back thousands of years to non-terrestrial beings that they feel they have, that they have the right, and of course they do not have the right, nor should they ever have the right. It says now, This is not a criticism with what I'm about to say. This is not a slap in anyone's face or any group's face. It says, when I once asked Visayas what was to become of us, what was going to happen to us, and he said, to be totally self-confident and free, to unconditionally be responsible for oneself without being coerced by some higher authority. It says, now we're going to be dazzled by the Palladian starships, those from Cygnus, those from Sirius A, et al. He says, we're going to be impressed. Even Andromeda, we're going to be impressed. There's no way we wouldn't be impressed. It says there's no way we're not going to be in awe of their physical stature, their continence, their knowledge, their wisdom. It says all of those things, immensely impressive they are, and their intentions as well are honorable. However, we need to be who we are. We need to be who we are. We don't need to mimic or copy or be something we're not. We've already done that for thousands, 5,000 years, he says, basically. And look where we are. We have to be who we are. He says, and that's the trick, isn't it? That's the trick. He says, well, who are we? He says, we're still figuring that out because we have been divided from each other for a very, very long time. We have been put at each other's throats for a very, very long time. We have been taught racial prejudice. We've been taught genetic prejudice. These are all learned behaviors. And the reason that was done was to keep us divided from each other. Left to our own devices, he says, this shit would have gone away thousands and thousands of years ago. And we would be united as a single race, moving together in a single direction. It does not matter who it is or how benevolent they are. It says, ladies and gentlemen, we do not surrender our sovereignty. We do not surrender our self-responsibility. We do not surrender our structures of who it is that we want and how we want to live our lives. We have got to create this for ourselves. Do you understand? Or should I say understand? Do you understand? Okay. Right now, those of you that I'm talking to, even my dog, he says, we've all had other lives in other realms. Okay. You can look at their density as the basement, he says. We've all have other lifetimes and other experiences in other realms. We know this. We just don't remember at this moment. But we know this. We know what to do. We know what we don't want. We have the ability to basically look at the entire galaxy and take the best of each civilization because all of you are represented here. Do you understand? As I've said before, Earth is a living library, okay? It's a living library. And it was almost a test to see how well we could get along with each other in this ecosystem. It is amazing. It's an amazing place, okay? Said you are all represented here in physical human bodies. And we can create a planet that is a compendium of the best that there is. He says, but we have to do this. And yeah, it's hard work, but we have to do this. We have got to cut our cloth. He says the prime directive was changed for us. Do you understand? It was changed for us. We've already made a difference. It says we already have created change. And if you don't think that's a big deal, it's a massive deal. And it's a huge deal, changing the prime directive. And the credit for that goes to different people. It was a group effort to make that happen. So the point I'm making is, he says, even though you're not aware of it, these are people, or there are people On this planet, says there are beings on this planet and off-world that are working together to make change. So when our governments collapse, and they are going to, because they're corrupt, they don't serve the people. They're actually enslaving you. When these things are taken down and everything goes local, you, the people, we, the people on this planet, wherever you are, we have got to step forward and take control of our countries. And it starts on a local level, and then it goes to a state level, or country level, or a province, wherever it is that you are, a district, and then it goes to a national level. There's no reason any country has to surrender its sovereignty and its national flair. It says its cultural flair. We're all unique, which is what makes Earth so remarkable. Yes, the diversity. We're not all the same, and we don't have to be, okay? It says we just have to have equal rights. What's good for one is good for the other, and we have to learn to live together and share the abundance that is everywhere, that has been stolen from humanity, and to be a responsible partner, not only to the planet, but also to humanity. A responsible partner. We have got to be the leaders. We have got to step forward and do this. And in so doing this, not only do we empower ourselves and show others how to do it, but they become empowered, and then they empower their children, and we change everything. The frequency of this planet can change so fast, it would blow all of your minds. And we've seen some of that with the Schumann resonance being blacked out for hours and hours. We're increasing our frequency. It says because we've all come from other higher experiences. It says at night when people travel, they're going to starships. You're not in third density. You're in fourth, you're in fifth. He said some of you are in sixth. And he says, and I know some who are going into seventh. He said, so when you travel, he says, you're going into the future. And he said that twice. You are going into the future. Okay. All you have to think about now is you're here. He says, you're here. All you have to do is go to that future place and bring two things together here. So you're here and you're not here, but you have to bring your information together. It says, and draw that to you here, that experience, that knowledge, that awareness. That is what time travel is. My hardest problem is I'm out there, I'm on these starships, I'm in these I'm on different planets. I know I'm in different parallel worlds or other dimensions, and I know when I'm there, like I know I can talk that language, I can read the other language, I can, it's all very real, but then I come back here and I wake up and I like all that's gone. Like a lot of that language or that knowledge that I learned in these classrooms, it's all gone. So I'm just waiting. I'm waiting. Hopefully, like a lot of you, like we're just waiting for that day where like boop, it gets turned on and we're like, oh my God. Oh my God. I remember my past lives. I remember who I am. I remember like all that. Won't that be awesome? Says you bring 2 points together. He says basically you fold space when you bring 2 points together. You fold space. He says we can do that without technology. He says, you know, we can do that without technology. You just have to know you can do it. He says, so let's all work together to take these moments in the future, and draw them to us here and now. Let's remove the distance and bring it to us here now. Let's assist the Alliance and the white hats, they're working their tushies off. He says they really are. They're spending a lot of time. They're away from their families, their cultures, their civilizations. He says, there are a lot of motherships here and around the perimeter of our solar system. There's so much going on. It's mind blowing. It really, really is. And he says, they're not here to see us fail. He says, you understand? He says, but we're no longer the victims. So, see, we're no longer the victims. So, we have to stop thinking that way. You have to let all that shit go, because that's not the situation we're all in anymore. It says we're really not. The media wants you to believe that. The dark side wants you to believe that. But we're no longer victims. We are actually free and sovereign already. But how many of you know how to think that way? How many people on the surface of the planet know how to think that way? As a true, genuine, sovereign being. They don't. They don't know how. He says they just don't know how. So there's going to be a massive learning curve here, or as they say in the movies, a curve. Or someone basically said in the chat, it's called the character's story arc. It says the actors use a story arc. He says, I know they have another expression for it. It says where they go exponentially. He says that's all going to happen to us here. I'm bringing this up because we're right there. It says we are right there for the dominoes to start falling, to click. Okay? It says pieces are now in place to flip everything. It says now, why did the dark side go to so much trouble to enslave us, using what a lot of people refer to as the matrix? It says, and exactly what is the matrix? The best analogy I want to give you, or the easiest analogy I could give you, is walking into a movie studio. And you walk into a movie studio, and there you have the sound stage, the backdrop. You have everything there. And they're shooting the scene of a movie. And you're standing here, and you see the cameras, and the lights, and the crew, and the booms, and all this other stuff. But if you come around and you're looking at it through the camera, all you see is the camera and what's happening in front of you. Now, to a child who goes to the movies, that's what he sees. It's what's on the camera. He doesn't see any of the other stuff that set up that particular scene of the movie. He says, well, that's exactly what these non-terrestrials did. He says, for us, is that they took a significant amount of time to set us up in a movie. And the reason they did that is they have very long lives. But they had offspring, hybrid offspring, and they continued the same agenda. And these families, these souls of these extraterrestrials and hybrids, would incarnate into the same families because they have the technology to do that. So they would continue the agenda. So what the Matrix basically is, in very simple English, it was a stage. A stage was created where we would have a specific type of life. What we didn't know is that by tweaking our consciousness and getting us to believe it was a reality, that what we were seeing was a genuine reality. Using our consciousness, we literally created this real field of energy. We literally created our own prison because we didn't know any better. Because they realized that when it comes to real physical manifestation, we have the gift. We have the gift. They don't. All of us here have the gift. All they had to do is convince us that it was real. And now that's unraveling. And as it unravels, like an onion, as it's being pulled away, we're seeing it for what it really is. And we're also beginning to see who it was that was manipulating us. And sadly, many of the people who were actually in front of us had sold us all out. our own kind, had sold us all out. They were actually working for the controllers and manipulators, and there could be a lot of reasons for that. It could be the bloodlines, it could be fear, it could be power, this could be blackmail. There's all kinds of things that could have been going on, and I'm sure we'll hear all about it. But in order for you to be free, you have to want to be free. In order to live your life as a sovereign, we all have to learn how to think as a sovereign being, so that we do not surrender our rights. We do not surrender our liberties. We do not surrender our self-empowerment ever, ever, ever again. And future generations don't do it as well. They have to be educated after we have figured it out ourselves. We have to be sure all the lessons we are learning right now are not only well documented, but are passed forward using the law of consistency, that this information moves forward to future generations with the intention that they become smarter than we are. There truly is no reason to be in fear. There really is not. It says, I know that financially things are really, really tough. It says, we're all there. Yes, we are. Everybody everywhere is trying to squeeze every little penny out of us right now, whether it be food, gas, bills, medical bills, anything like that. Every little penny, and it's hurting. He says, I understand we're worried about the winter. We're worried about food. He says, but you know what? If we're all working together as a community, there wouldn't be any concerns. We would all figure it out because that's what we do best. It says, in moments of crisis, we figure it out. We rise to the occasion. We've always done that. Yes, we have. For some reason, we always seem to be at our best when things are at our worst. And I guess it's not only a survival response, but he says it's a compassionate response that we all have. Exactly. It says all of us who are speakers and all other terms that are used, he says we're bridges. I've said this before, we're bridges. We're to get you from here to here, and then at some point another speaker or speakers will come forward that have a different way of explaining things or have more knowledge, more experience. It says then they take everyone to the next level. It says, but please understand this. We can only self-empower you to the point that we are self-empowered. I, for example, cannot teach you more self-empowerment than I know. And in a couple of my first videos that I did, I had someone reply and they wanted me to teach them. And I was kind of like, I don't know what you want me to teach you, because I feel the same way. I just feel like we're each on our own journey. I don't know what I can teach you. I can tell you what I do and what helps me, but we're all on our own journey, you know. I'm not looking for money, and yeah, like thank you for the donations. I've received several, so thank you so much. I appreciate that. Support Alex too on his website. But yeah, I felt bad, and then I never heard back from that person, and so I feel kind of bad in a way, but I feel like I'm a teacher, but then again, I don't. Like, I just feel like we all need to do it on our own. We all need to have that experience, because I can tell you, I can tell you, but unless you actually experience it, you're not going to learn from it. So anyway, he says, it can only be equal to my own experience. Exactly. He says, so no one's to be canonized. No one is to be defied or deified. He says, do you understand? No one is to be deified. You know, we're here to help move things along because we care, because we love humanity, because we have families and we have a vested interest in the success of humanity, and because those of us who have fallen from other dimensions, we absolutely love underdog stories. We do. It says we love the underdog stories because we've all been there. We have all been there. We have all been underdogs. So we love those stories. And humanity on Earth is a true underdog story. It really is. And yes, they're here to help. Um, them out there, they're here to help. It says, but you need to be fully aware of this. We are the ones making the change here. By changing our consciousness, the way we see ourselves, we are changing and dissolving the matrix. We're no longer the victims. We are now becoming the victors. It says, know that. Allow that to empower you. I just keep getting that Queen song in my head. We are the champions. We are the champions, my friend. I just keep hearing that in my head. It says, it is no one else's responsibility to make you happy. Only you can do that, and you have to know that. That's all on you. It is not on anybody else. And if you want, and if what I'm saying doesn't resonate with you, then find someone who has a similar message that does resonate to you, he says, because all I want is for you to be empowered. So this shit ends, okay? I'm not looking for followers. He says, I've told you this before. I want you to walk next to me. Exactly. Exactly. I want you to stand next to me as an equal. That's all I want. That's all I want. So we go through the door together. I don't give a fuck about the clicks, he says. I don't pay any attention to that shit. He says, none, because I don't care. When I go home, I want to know I did everything I could do. I'm interested in the end result, okay? And the journey. And I do pay attention to the journey. He says, and that's what you should be looking for, okay? Is to be present, to be here for the journey, for the moments. Because these moments right now, this conversation and other conversations that you're having in your daily life, you're building your world with those conversations. Because your voice, I've said this before in my past videos too, your voice, what you speak, your frequency goes out into the universe, and the universe responds to that because we're creators. Yes, we're so on the same page. It says that's why they enslaved us, because they knew we could do this. We could create this whole world. He says we could literally manifest all this stuff. He says, and we gave them a place to hide out because, of course, we didn't know. He says, well, now that we know, we can't allow them any place to hide at all. They need to adios themselves, or we need to get help and have them adiosed. And that's happening. But when they're all gone, it's just us. It's just us. So what's the world gonna look like? How are we gonna treat each other? How are we going to behave with each other? What are our values going to be? How are we going to raise future generations? How are we going to be regarding the mentorship of the planet and all of nature? It says these are all things we're going to have to talk about. We're going to have conversations about, and we're not only going to have to do it within our immediate families, but with our local communities, and then our national community, and then globally. And we have to be the ones controlling the conversation and the narrative. We, the people. I want to get a great big sticker for the back of my car window. We the people. I had a guy come into our shop the other day and he had a We the People t-shirt and I acknowledged it and I said, I love your t-shirt. So yeah, we just have to you know, give compliments out more and more too. Like, what does it hurt to smile? Say, have a nice day. You know, it doesn't take much. He says, not a special interest group, not a military industrial complex, not even a non terrestrial off worlder. We can ask for advice and we can do that, and we will pay attention to the advice that's given because there's obvious wisdom there. He says, but we are the ones that have to do this. We are the ones that have to do this. We are the ones we've been waiting for. I thought it was really important to bring this back to ground one because something really, really big is about to happen. It says, I don't specifically know what it is, but if you've ever been in the woods and the hair on the back of your neck stands up because you know there's something coming, it says, then you know. You know that you know. It says, if you're psychic or clairvoyant or intuitive and you get that feeling, it's because you know something's coming. Some piece of news, he says, whatever it is, you know something's coming. Well, something is definitely coming, okay? And then, of course, Trump posted that picture that said the storm is coming, and it had the Game of Thrones fonts, because he was a big Game of Thrones person. He loved that show. So he is playing the Game of Thrones right now. And I think it's great. And he had the little Q pin on his lapel. It's a coming. He says, so we need to be clear. I wanted to be as clear with you as possible. My thoughts on the matter, and yes, we should be very grateful for the help we're getting from the Alliance and the others. He says, at some point, we will also be grateful for what the Dark Ones have done because of how much we've learned and how much experience we have gained from their experience. This experience. He says that will also come because to truly move forward, we have to forgive. Otherwise, we drag that shit with us and then we don't genuinely move and benefit from the change because you're still holding on to the past. Exactly. George Kavasilis talked a lot about that too, 12 years ago. Allowing, accepting and thanking the darkness because they are teaching us. We are learning from them. The organic, real dark does not seek to hurt. It will teach you in different ways, okay? But the synthetic darkness, the satanic shit, it does hurt, okay? It says, but we're obviously not there yet, okay? So at least not all of us. It says, but it's coming. We have got to remain sovereign. We as a race. We don't run away from one master just to acquire another. That's not what this is about, okay? He says it twice. That's not what this is about. And I want us all to be really clear about that. We can do this. We absolutely can do this. We just have to do it. He says, okay, that's all I got. So let's do some questions. He says, please. And I'm sure there are a few, right? First question. I was just listening to your presentation during the Mount Shasta Summer Conference. You mentioned we have 8 years left before the big shift. What did you mean by that? Since time does not exist, and is it possible everyone experiences this in different way depending on their awareness? Alex's answer is okay. The reason I say that is because the Looking Glass 1 and Looking Glass 2 technology, to the best of my knowledge that I could find out, they cannot see anything beyond, I believe it's October of 2030. And I knew this like 12 years ago. They talked about it where there's a certain time they could not see past at all. So that's very interesting. It says, I do not know the specific date in October, but the machine just goes static after that. Now, what does that mean? He says, do we jump? Is that when we jump? Does it end? Does the third density holograph, the matrix that we're in, does it end on that date? It says, see, we don't know. We don't know beyond that point, this specific timeline that we're on. So I don't know how to exactly interpret that. But that was the point I was trying to make at Shasta, is that we don't know beyond that point. So we have work to do because we don't know. It says we have to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and we have to get it in gear and really start thinking about what we want. Now, do I think it all ends? No, I do not. But clearly something changes at that moment. At that time, something changes. It says, now, are we going to be victims of the change, or are we going to be the ones who create the change? He says, pick one. Okay. It says, I would prefer to be the ones that change as opposed to being a victim. Sick and tired of that shit, aren't you? He says, aren't you sick and tired of being a victim? He says, I'm just asking. So that's why I brought this up at Shasta. I am. I'm done. I've been done for a long time. Next question. Elena Danan mentioned currently in one of her videos, once the apocalyptic from the movie we are watching is over, we will not have the possibility to decide to get our original DNA, which has been brought back from Inky. What is your take on that? I didn't quite understand that question. It's a little jumbled, but he says, I'm only hesitating because I'm trying to choose the appropriate words here. If anyone was going to have the original DNA template, it would be Inky. He says, now, I've not spoken to Lord Inky, so I don't know, but I'm going to assume from what I know from Morane and Visayas that he would be more than gracious in order to restore our original DNA in its original form. And that, of course, would be 12 strands. That doesn't mean all 12 strands are turned on, okay? Let's be clear about that. It just means you can grow and turn them on as you evolve. I would be okay with that, he says, because our DNA has been really screwed with, and especially with the jab, sorry, but especially with all the pollutants in the atmosphere and then the water. He says, I mean, if you've been paying attention, he says the dark side wanted to create a hybrid race. That wasn't us. He says they were gonna use their own genetics to create a hybrid race, a physical form that would allow them to transfer souls into this hybrid form and allow them to jump into another dimension. That was how they would travel. Yeah, because they can't do it themselves. In case you were wondering, they just didn't want all of us here. They didn't need all of us. They had mapped out their plan of very specific races that would be compliant to all the experiences that would be needed, and they were going to eliminate the rest of us. Do you understand? So this thing got way out of hand. It says Miss Denon would be the more appropriate person to address the rest of this because she's had an interaction with Inky. So I would have to defer the rest of this to her because that is her lane. That is her lane. Next question. Following our anticipated planetary transition, what role do you think the A's will play with the new Earth? Alex's answer is, I know presently they are mentoring the other groups of non-terrestrials that are here assisting us. Says they are helping to coordinate actions and moves and responses. And I know the A's themselves are being mentored by another group in 6th and 7th density. So when I told you that everybody is checking each other's work, that's exactly what's happening. Okay? It says through multiple dimensions, everything is being managed for a very specific outcome, and that outcome benefits everybody, the entire galaxy, especially us. I know that M would love to spend some time on the surface. I know that. And this is great. He says, we've had those conversations, and if it's him, there would be others as well. He says, because Earth is glorious. There are very few planets with this much diversity and life, an ecosystem, a living library, right? Exactly. And it's one thing to take a picture and to put it into the holograph, but it's another to experience it yourself. It says, I know M would love to meet our dolphins. Oh, I thought that was so sweet. He says, that has been expressed several times over the years that we've known each other, is that he would really enjoy meeting our dolphins. And I would love to make that happen, he says. I would. So we'll see. We'll see how this works. I would love to swim with dolphins. I've held a baby tiger before, and I've swam with stingrays, but I would love to swim with dolphins. Next question. Could you please clarify the difference between consciousness and soul? And Alex laughs and he says, okay. He says, my perspective is, and from what I've been taught, they're actually one and the same. Consciousness is who you are as a being of light, an aspect of source. Now, what does that actual consciousness look like? He says, well, it's self-contained. It's an energy grid, a field, a multi-dimensional field of energy that can pass through dimensions and the membranes that separate dimensions at will. The more you fall in dimensions into physical planes, which vibrate slower, the more solidified the soul becomes. So it is still energy, but it's still energy. It is still a conscious collective of all that you are since you've left source. It says now you're never disconnected from source, ever. But you are creating your own journey, and everything that you experience, the highs and the lows, all that goes back to source. And source acknowledges the experiences. And what it does is it says it grows and expands from the knowledge we ourselves experience and share with source. It's almost as if you move out and you have all these experiences during your life. And when you go home and you hug your mother, you tell her everything and you share all of your experiences, the highs and the lows, emotions, the heartbreaks. You share all of that with your mother. That is exactly what we are doing with Source. We are sharing all that with Mother. Because in the A's perspective and that of other groups, if we had to apply a gender to Source, it would be feminine, the feminine principle as a gender. So you can look at it that way, except Mother doesn't judge. It says Mother doesn't judge. The love is truly unconditional. So there's no need for fear ever. It says ever. It says that is all bullshit. We were taught. I'm a jealous God. He says it was all bullshit. Those were extraterrestrials who pretended to be God because they got off on it. Exactly. Next question. Oh, and before I say that, like I mentioned it before too. Like after my mom passed away, she had pancreatic cancer, and I got a lot of Sylvia Brown books. Her books are great. I learned a lot of spiritual stuff from that lady. Um, so if you're ever interested in that, like go find Sylvia Brown books because she was a medium. She was a psychic. And a lot of the things like she described in her books, I have had some of those experiences like in my astral travels. So she validated a lot of stuff for me too through my lifetime. So she has a lot of good information. Next question. Have we been repeating certain historical storylines over and over again with different actors, like the story of Jesus and Horus, having many similarities? If so, please explain this. Alex says, well, if you look at history, if you truly objectively look at history, there have been at least 16 saviors that have been crucified in history. 16. And yes, the stories do tend to repeat themselves with new faces and different generations. And it's because it was a program. It was a program to keep us in a loop, a belief system, a loop where we would not progress and step out of those particular paradigms, to keep us in a victimhood position. Because if you're a victim, you're a fear. And if you're in fear, you're easily angered, which means you're easy to manipulate. And a lot of folks have been stuck in that loop, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, in specific bloodlines, no less. And these stories were predominantly created to take power outside of ourselves individually and to direct it towards some higher authority that we perceived as a higher authority, to tell us what to do, what to think, how to feel, how to pray, how to observe God, spirit, all that is, to keep us in that loop. And what we're going to find out about our history, as we are finding out now, is that one, most of it has been hidden from us, and two, a great deal of it isn't even true at all and never has been. These were stories that were created thousands of years ago that would keep us in this loop of disempowerment and fear. Because as long as they could keep us in fear, they can control and manipulate you. Whew, I need a fan in here. lots of energy today. When you have no fear, they cannot control you. They cannot manipulate you, and they actually become afraid of you. Because the truth of the matter is they have more fear than we do, which is why they project all that shit onto us, and it's worked for thousands and thousands of years. Hello, Amber. I have my video kitty with me, of course. You want to say hi? Can you say hi? Say hi. Say hi, Amber. Hello. Okay, next question. Do you know when the weather modifications for harm and destruction will come to an end? And Alex says, I do not. I do not. There's information that a great deal of water on the surface is being moved into the inner earth to clean out not only the dumps, but some other areas as well. And the Alliance is working with those of the inner earth in the hollow earth area to do this. They're working in concert together. And what's going to be happening very soon is that the water on the surface is going to be replenished. At least that's what I've been told. He says, and I have absolutely no reason to think that's not going to happen, because we have been seeing some very interesting rainfalls. He says, 9 inches here, 12 inches there, and then the drought's over. So we'll just have to see. As the population grows, there are going to be those who are going to travel inside the earth. There are places inside the earth that have their own light, where particles of the sun are captured in canyons, and they have a contrast or constant light, where specific things will grow in these caverns. He says, and I mean, these caverns are the size of states or countries, but they have to be cleared out biologically, and the physical debris has to be cleaned out. So this is going on as we speak, and it has been going on for some time now, so that we can inhabit the entire earth. You see, the entire earth. And I apologize, but at this moment, that's as far as I can go with this. He says, guys, there's so many amazing things happening, as well as dark things. He says, but there's more amazing things happening than dark things. And at some point, it's all going to flip. It's all going to be amazing. He says, just hang in there. He says, I know how tough it is. Just hang in there, okay? We're going to be okay. I promise you, we're going to be okay. The only reason it's scary is because we don't have enough information. And it always looks like here on the surface, the bad guys get away with shit. Says that's just how it looks. Next question. Hi, Alex. Do you think you would have remembered your past lives on your own had it not been for the A's providing their information? Also, many, if not most of us, have many memories of our past lives. And I have read this. I've read this because we have not developed a high enough level of consciousness. Do you agree with this? Do you agree with this, that this is a major reason? And Alex says, I think for some that's absolutely true. I do. He says, do I know what my journey would have been if the A's or Mornay of Visayas not approached me or altered my life? He says, that's a really good question. I have pondered it in the past. Says, but I was always drawn, even as a kid, to Native American spirituality. I love that because I have been too. Like, it's funny because no one else in my family, neither my mom or my dad, we didn't have Native American decorations in our house growing up, nothing. But I remember I had this little Indian beaded doll, and then my mom had an Indian doll that one of her past boyfriends had given her, and she had it in a hope chest that I have now. But I don't know where that Indian doll went, and I loved that. I had a thing for that. He says, even those times I was an altar boy, I was always drawn to Native American spirituality. There's just something about it that I totally resonated to. He says, so I think that curiosity would have continued, that intrigue I had for that and learning how nature works in Great Spirit. And I think even if I had moved towards the church, I would have eventually left it. He says, and I've told the story about telling my dad, or I wanted to actually join the priesthood. He says, I seriously considered it. And he was like, no, 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 no. Says, that's when he gave me the book, The Vatican Empire. It was a little paperback. And he goes, you need to read it. And I was like 12 years old. He says, and I did. And I was like, oh shit. It's a business. That's all it really is. It's a business. And that's the point he was trying to make to me. My dad was supposed to be a priest too. He was, he was supposed to go to school, to seminary, to become a priest. And then he met my mom. So that didn't pan out. Thank God. Thank God for mom, huh? Let's see. He says, so I think I would have found my way here to doing webinars and as such. She says, probably not. I probably would have had some little home somewhere, hopefully still married, 2.3 children. And he laughs and he says, it's really hard to know. He says, it's really difficult to know. He says, I've lived 3 lifetimes in this life. Each one stands alone. He says, so I have no idea, actually. But looking back to where I am now, I wouldn't change a thing. I might do some things over. He said, I made a boatload of mistakes, but it is what it is. He says, I am who I am today because of the journey and because of the mistakes. says, you know, that's where wisdom comes from. Wisdom comes from the mistakes. Next question. Do you have any information about the Norfolk, Virginia Navy base now being under NATO command? Hoping this is a bad rumor. Alex's answer is no, it's real. But you need to understand that the more you learn who the Democratic Party really is and who it truly represents in the military industrial complex, says, you know, they needed a place to where they could take equipment and money and other stuff. He said the loot, all the loot, and get it to the bribes and stuff, to the generals in other countries of NATO. Oh my gosh, my cat's making noise. Amber, no, no. Says they needed a point in which things could go onto the base, and then from there it could be transported back and forth with no one being able to question anything. That was the purpose. He says that was the purpose. He says it won't be here long. He says we could kick their ass in a New York minute, which is 10 seconds. He says, for those of you who didn't know, New York minute is 10 seconds. So it's not even really an issue, he says, but unfortunately it is true. He says, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I guess we'll see you in 2 weeks. Is it? He says, look, stay grounded, take care of yourselves, love yourself, love your family, even if it's from a distance. Listen to good music, eat good food, take walks, appreciate nature, and above all, remember who you are. Okay? Remember who you are. Try to stay in the moment and connect to those pieces of yourself that are somewhere else. Know there's more to you than just this, okay? And if there's something that comes up, he says, I'll send it to James on WhatsApp and he will post it up on the site. He says it'll probably be like an audio, okay? Because we're right there. We're literally right there. Thank you for supporting our little webinar. Thank you for the donations. That I've gotten, he says, the last 2 weeks. He says, you will be hearing from me personally. We're going to be okay. We are going to be okay. He says, we're now at the time where everything begins to shift and there's no stopping what's coming. He says, so buckle up because you're here for the ride, as we all are. He says, God bless. Take care. Support your fellow conspiracy theorists, okay, and fellow contactees, because we're all in this together. Take care. God bless. So, and I wanted to thank the last donation I got from Danny. I think it was Danny Adams. Thank you, Danny, for your donation. I do appreciate it. Yeah, any little bit is great. To help in these times. I don't ask for it. If you want to and you feel you want to give something, that's great. You can also support Alex. I always say that. Please go to his page, alexcollier.org. You can donate there, and it helps JP and James as well. That help him. He's also on brighteon.com. Every Friday he does his webinars. There's 3 weeks out of the month, so he does take 1 week off, but get in there and ask questions, and he might be able to answer that. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all the new subscribers. I appreciate it. If you like this, share this with people you think might enjoy it as well. It's getting there. I'm transcribing the next one where he talks about the monarchies and the queen dying. So hopefully that'll be next week. I have to work all weekend, the next 4 days. So hopefully I can get this up sometime before Saturday. Today is Thursday. So Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We are almost there. Like everything, just I was so excited of this recent information. Like I just know things are gonna start, it's that it was that slow drip, and now we're going, the flood is coming. The flood is coming. So thank you so much for watching, and I love all of you. I wish I could give you all a great big hug. You are my soul family. Thank you for watching. Um, and yes, just remember, stay grounded, live in the moment, get out in nature, and keep being that bright light. Keep shining your light. Maybe it'll wake some people up, you know. Maybe at this point, I think almost everybody's woke up who could be woke up, but you never know. Some might wake up even more. So, anyway, like my bracelet says, so say we all. Where we go one, we go all. So, I love all of you. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye.